Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Demystifying Windows 11 webinar today. My name is Brooke Kennedy, and I'm joined by our two presenters, Sarah Jelinek and Jerod Fremin. Sarah is Arctic IT's Enterprise Solution Architect. She plays an essential role on our innovation team and helps to develop new solutions for our clients. We're happy to share that Sarah is also in Microsoft MVP and part of an elite group that participates in the advancement and adoption of Microsoft technologies. Jerod is Arctic IT's Director of Arctic Care Services. He is based out of our headquarters in Anchorage, Alaska, where he runs the team that serves a variety of managed services and application services. Jerod and his team have been working hand in hand with our clients on their Windows 11 upgrades, so we thought it was fitting to have him join us where he can speak to this topic firsthand. We've got a great turnout on the call today. So as a reminder, we designed this presentation for folks who are new to Windows 11 or have yet to upgrade. But if you're an early adopter, there's still a few nuggets you may learn about some of the cool Windows 11 features. So we anticipate a few questions along the way. If you could please just add them, type them into the chat box. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Sarah.
Thank you, Brooke, and thanks, Jerod, for joining me today. I'm very excited for us to talk about demystifying Windows 11 and what you need to know. So what are we going to cover in our presentation today in these next 45 minutes, exciting 45 minutes? We're going to give you a quick intro to Windows 11 and talk about, what is it? What are we expecting? Is there a cost associated with it? We'll give you some essential details. And then we're going to talk about 5 things you'll love about Windows 11. And I got to tell you, I love these things about Windows 11, and I use them every day and continue to learn more wonderful things about them. Then, for those of you who haven't had the chance to upgrade yet or planning to, we're going to talk about 5 things you need to know before you upgrade. And I think that's going to be essential for us to help get you that transition to Windows 11 to make it as seamless as possible and make that experience even more enjoyable. And finally, we'll close up with some parting thoughts as you're preparing for your upgrade. And of course, as always, leave some time for questions and answers at the end. But as we're going through, if you think of a question that you have right away, go ahead and put that into the question, and we'll make sure that we're monitoring that throughout the session. And if we can't get to it during the session, we'll try to get to that immediately during our question and answer period. So let's jump right into our presentation. Let's first talk about what Windows 11 is. Well, Windows 11 is the latest Windows NT operating system. So those of you might remember the very famous operating system, Windows XP, that just changed the world, made everything a little bit easier for people when they're working with their personal computers or laptops. This is what Windows 11 is. It's an operating system. A lot of people recently are on Windows 10. Some people were on Windows 8. Microsoft is slowly phasing out those operating systems and the supportability, and they're continuing to improve the capabilities of our operating systems and the user interface and the user-friendly atmosphere about that. This was released in October of 2021. So some people may have joined the bandwagon of hopping onto Windows 11 right away and experienced some of that functionality back then. But as we're starting to see, as you're buying new equipment, new laptops, PCs, some tablet devices that can have operating systems on them, you'll see that they are now coming out with Windows 11 included on them. I did that personally. I bought a laptop. I had Windows 11. I was able to use it before we upgraded here at Arctic IT. And as I continue to use it, the experience just continues to be better. Now, the great thing about Windows 11 is that it's a free upgrade from Windows 10. In the past, if you wanted to use a newer operating system, you had to purchase it. You had to purchase a license for it. Buy it from a big box store or buy it from Microsoft or a value-added reseller. Well, Microsoft's doing a really cool thing here and making that available as a free upgrade from Windows 10. Some of you might see when you're running Windows updates, it does a little check to see, hey, we'll see if your machine is eligible to upgrade to Windows 11. And Jerod's going to be a wonderful resource to help us understand that process a little bit later in our presentation today. So with that Windows 11 operating system, I really do want to jump into the 5 things you'll love. Now, some of you who may have already upgraded, hopefully you'll find these 5 things useful and help you fall in love with Windows 11 even more. For those of you who haven't upgraded, you can still see that these are great features that you can expect to use after the upgrade. So let's jump right into it. The first is the fresh new look. Now, when I first saw this, it took a little bit of getting used to. You had a sleek, modern opening screen. This was a nice experience using Windows Hello. It just simply turned my camera on, looked at me, made sure I was the right person, logged me onto my computer, made it simple. The simplified start menu is a significant change as well. You can kind of see in our screenshot that we have within this slide what that start menu looks like. And it's no longer that nested set of folders or menu items that you need to click into and open up another one and try find the application you need. You'll see the applications right there, an easy to search bar available or search box available for you to use. You'll also see that when you're working within Windows 11, you now have rounded corners on app windows. Now, this isn't a huge significant change, but it's still enough of a change that it makes a difference. Windows in the past has been very boxy. This just adds just a kind of a little bit more aesthetically pleasing appearance to your windows and applications that you're using. And the big change that people are noticing is the streamlined, customizable taskbar, that is centered. So when you look at it, having it be in the middle, it's a little bit different. We're all used to going to the lower left corner of our screen, clicking that start menu, and accessing our applications, and all of our applications going left aligned. Well, with this customizable taskbar being centered, it's a minor thing, but as I realize it, I have to do a little bit less movement with my mouse to go click on something on the taskbar or open up my start menu. So these little minor changes kind of add up to the experience and make that user experience a little bit more pleasant when working with this operating system. Now, another great feature with Windows 11 is that Android apps are native. Now, when I first looked at this feature, I thought, well, I'm an iPhone person, to be honest with you. Why would I want this capability in Windows? Well, the fact that I can have apps that I'm used to having on my phone, on my computer, actually made a lot of sense. For example, when a lot of developers out there are creating apps, they do it for both iOS and for Android. So the availability of apps are greatly expanded for a user to use on their computer. You can actually download these directly from the Microsoft Store. They can be added into the taskbar or the start menu. Some examples of these apps include Power Apps, which is my personal favorite, that I can actually have that same experience that I would on my phone, launching a Canvas app on my mobile device. I can do that on my computer. Other apps like Spotify, Facebook, WhatsApp, Netflix, and more. Now, if you're looking for this functionality with your work computer, you may want to talk to your IT administrator before putting on something like Facebook or WhatsApp or Netflix. These apps are really great for your personal computer. I personally have the Kindle app and the Audible app on my computer, my personal computer, so I can read as well as listen to audiobooks perhaps when I'm working. So if there's an app that you use for business on your phone, you should be able to add this to your computer using the Microsoft Store. Now, this next feature is a very exciting one. It's called Desktop Flows. And I'm going to give you an example of these other items that we're showing for the top 5, but this is one we're going to spend a little bit more time on. And that is being able to help automate your world. So some of you may be familiar with the term Power Automate. And the idea behind this is that you can provide automation through your services, different services, like if you're using Dynamics 365 CE, CRM, customer service, sales, if you're using just Power Platform, using Dataverse as your data standard, or maybe using a Power App to connect to SharePoint or Excel, you have some capabilities with the Power Platform to automate some of that work. Well, now we have Power Automate for your desktop, and it's included in Windows 11. And I have to tell you, this is one of the biggest features that I love about Windows 11. Now, this desktop flow, if you think about it, it's really doing what we call robotic process automation. So imagine a robot sitting at your computer, moving your mouse and doing actions for you. Those repetitive things that you do all the time that you think, oh, I wish I could just have an easy button to do this. Well, that's what Desktop Flows is going to do for you, is to help automate those repetitive daily tasks. It's that new easy button. Now, Desktop Flows is available. You do need to download it from the App Store. It's not always automatically included on your machine. But once you download it, it's very easy to use. The great thing is it works easily with your workstation, with your Windows 11 operating system. It also works with natively with Microsoft Office apps like Excel and Outlook. So some of the great functionality makes it a little bit easier to use some of those common applications you use. So let's take a pause from me presenting from our PowerPoint here, and let's actually take a look at some of these examples that we're talking about. So I'm going to first take us to an application I have open here. Now, before I jump into Power Automate, I do want to talk about those other two features I just mentioned. You know, the streamlined user interface that we have here. My screen is a little bit zoomed in to make this presentation a little bit easier to see, but you'll see that my Start menu is no longer in the left corner. It's now towards the center of the screen. So when I click my Start menu, I can see my apps. I can easily search for them. Notice the rounded edges that we're going to see within that application. Now, with this, I can also go to the Microsoft Store. I can have that application open, and I can search for the appropriate apps that I want. So for example, if I want to search for the Kindle app, I can see there's quite a few options. I have the Kindle for Android. I have one that I have to pay money for. But in this case, I could actually just choose to download this directly onto my machine, and it's going to look like just the app I would have on a tablet or on my mobile phone. Now, the item I wanted to show you is Power Automate. So what Power Automate does is you sign into the system, you sign into the application, and you can choose to create these desktop flows. So what does a desktop flow consist of? Now, I have one that I happen to create here as part of a demo, but you also have some examples that you can look at. So things that you maybe want to automate for those repetitive tasks, you're going to see we've got a couple of examples for Excel, for web, and for desktop. And you can easily click on these example areas and look at the flows that are listed here. So in this example, I've got, to launch Excel and extract information from a table. I can just launch Excel. I can search and replace Excel values. Now, as I'm looking at this information, I can actually choose to run that flow, or I can click the edit button to see what this looks like. Now, as that's running here, I'll bring up another window. And just to make this a little bit easier to see, I'm just going to change my screen zoom here. And take us back into Power Automate. So this is just a little bit easier for us to see now. So what does a desktop flow look like? Well, first of all, when you edit an existing one, you're going to see an example of what that, just a brief description of what that flow does. But it is a very easy way to customize or create those flows using some very simple language, using some actions that we have. So for example, I can have an action to say, you know what, I just want to display a message, ask somebody for maybe a text message or just display a message to them. And as I start to add these actions and set these values, you're going to see it's a very user-friendly language. I'm not dealing with custom code like JSON or working with C# or C++ or VB. It's a very easy to read language for the person that's creating these flows. You'll also see that you've got variables as you're going through and automating some of these items. You've got variables that you can use within these actions. So if I click on something in a previous step, I want to take the information from that step and then perform an action on it. You also have user interface elements you can include. You can also have it take pictures if you want to. And if you look on the left-hand side with all of our actions, there's a lot of capability here. Working with PDF files, you can work with OCR, with XML, Active Directory, Azure, Amazon Web Services. There's a lot of capabilities with these desktop flows. So let's take a look at creating a very simple one. So I'm going to click back on My Flows and create a new one. And I'm going to do something that, in the past, I would need some very special software to do this. I want to merge some PDF files. So this is going to be just a very quick two-step flow that we're going to create. So I'll click the Create button. It'll open up my flow editor, so I can then add the actions that I want to perform, as well as the step, the information that I need to provide as part of that. Now, to show you what we're going to do, I've got a folder here on my desktop called PDF Reports. And what I want to do is I want to take all 3 of these files and merge them into a single PDF. So in the past, I probably would need Adobe Acrobat to do that. And I want to be able to have a little control over it. So I'm going to use the Power Automate desktop flow to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my commands over here, and I'm going to go to my folder action group. And I'm going to say, let's just get some files in a folder. So get me a list of the files that are in a folder. Now I can double click on this, or I can drag and drop it onto my main screen and choose my parameters. And what I'm going to do here is I know exactly where I need to find these files. So I'm going to browse to that folder location. And I'm going to say for the files you're looking for, you're going to look for PDF files. And there's some advanced settings that we can do here, but I'm just going to simply click Save. So go out to that folder where I've got my PDFs, grab all those files. And the next step I'm going to do is I want to then use my PDF actions to merge the PDF files. So what files am I going to merge? Well, I'm going to use the files I just grabbed in my previous step. So here's a variable that I can use. I don't have to hard code it if I don't want to, but I can. I can actually go select that folder here if I need to. And then I can specify where I want this merged file to go. So I can select that. And let's just put this back on my desktop, and we'll call this my final report.pdf. All right, and if this file already exists, I can choose to override it, which it doesn't, but I'll do that anyway. And then some advanced features that you have here is if you want to put password protection on it, you've got a variable that gets produced as part of your file that you create. I can click Save, and there we go. So I'm going to now save my flow. Just like you'd save a Word document, you don't want to lose your changes. And now I can run this. So when I run this, actually runs, doesn't look like it really did anything. You saw some color changing there. But what actually happened, if I go to my desktop, I now have my final report that just generated about 15 seconds ago. I can open up this PDF, and I'll see my reports there. Now, there's some additional work I can do to sort them in a certain order, to change the order of files I wanted them to be input into the file. I can say sort them by their name, their created on date. There's all sorts of capabilities here to take it even further. Now that's just a very simple way for me to know every time I want to merge those files, they're going to be in this folder. I'm going to call it this, and I can run this as many times. So taking the process of merging a bunch of files and doing it within one click is going to save you a significant amount of time. Now, the great thing about Power Automate for the desktop flows is that you can make it even more user-friendly, and the fact that I can make it more dynamic. So here's one I created literally earlier before this presentation, that when I run this, it's going to say, all right, go grab the files that you want to merge. So I can go select the files that I want. And I can click OK, and it's going to say, all right, where do you want to put this? So I happen to be putting it in the same place, but notice that it's asking me what I want to do, where I want to grab those files, what I want to do. I can click Open. I can display a message to my user to let them know it's been done. And now if I go back to my desktop, here's my new report. And I've got my files listed there. So notice that it's really doing the same thing, but now I can make it much more adaptable and make it much more flexible to go beyond just the one task I wanted it to do. I can do it for any set of PDF files and put it anywhere I want to. So that's an exciting feature that we have about Power Automate. And I think that later on, as we continue to use this and continue to learn more about it, look forward to another webinar, hopefully on us covering that capability. But let's get back. We got 2 more exciting things to talk about Windows 11. So let's talk about the improved snap layouts. Now, when you are working within Windows, one of the things that you may encounter is you have multiple monitors, or you may have a really large monitor and you don't like that it's taking an application takes up the whole screen. So what you want to do is maybe be able to have a window side by side, or have a couple of different screens up so you can monitor a couple of different applications if you need to, and have it all on one screen to make it a little bit easier. Well, Snap layouts provide you that capability. You can have your windows arranged in different layouts on one screen, and you can save your favorite arrangements. So how this works is when you would normally go up to the upper right corner of your application and you're choosing the maximize or minimize command, when you hover over that, instead of clicking on the X, when you hover over that minimize or maximize bar, you'll notice that the Snap layout comes available to you. And this allows you to choose from different layouts that are available. So if you want to have, two windows right there side by side, if you want to have one window and then two smaller ones right next to it, you have all sorts of options. Now, once you put that Snap layout together, put those applications together, Windows creates what we call a Snap group. So in the past, when I would have to minimize something, I'd have to minimize every single one of those and then maximize them. Well, now I can treat the whole group as one and say, let's minimize the group. Let's maximize the group. I want to be able to see that information accordingly. So these Snap layouts are a really nice feature that I think they were sort of available in Windows 10, but I think the flexibility with it, the different layouts that you have that you can choose from immediately, just takes this to the next level. All right, so our last wonderful thing that we love about Windows 11, and it's not the only, there's many things that we love about it, but the one that I really wanted to talk to you about today was our individualized virtual desktops. So these virtual desktops allow us to kind of compartmentalize our work. We can create unlimited custom virtual desktops and name them. So for example, I may have a desktop where I'm doing my primary work for my organization, and I maybe want to create another desktop where I may be working on something for a customer or another project. Instead of having 15 applications open and a browser open with 20 different tabs and just being confusing and hard to track that information, I can use these desktops to group my work accordingly. Now, to keep them a little bit more personalized, you can choose a variety of modern wallpapers to easily identify them. Here I have my Arctic IT background on my desktop. If I'm working on something for a customer or working on an internal project, I may want to apply a different wallpaper so I can easily identify that. And moving between these desktops is very easy. You'll see that action right on the command bar, on your taskbar, and you can easily swap between them if you need to. And the great thing is you can have different programs open on each desktop. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to go to my Start menu here. Let's get back to our screen here. Now, where you're going to see the desktop command is available right on your taskbar. So it's next to my search, just to the right of our Start menu. Now, when I hover over this desktop command, you'll see I've got my primary, which is what you're seeing right now, and then I can choose to create a new desktop. As soon as I click that, I see Desktop 2 is available. Now what I'm going to do is I can right-click on this desktop and I can choose to rename it. So for example, I'll rename this to my Power Automate work. Right? Give it a title that you like, and right now I'm in that virtual desktop. And if I put my cursor back on that, I can always switch back to primary. Now, they both look the same. How can I keep them different? Well, when you right-click on that desktop, you can choose a background. And this actually brings it up in another screen for me here that I can personalize this background. So maybe I'll choose, this is a cool looking background. I'm going to apply that. Let's move this out of the way. And you can see it's very different from the one I had before. Now I can launch Power Automate here if I wanted to, but let's go back to our primary workstation. And now I'm back here. I'm going to go click back on this virtual desktop item again. Now when I click on it, instead of hovering over it, you're going to see the applications I happen to have open. So what I'll do here is I'm going to choose for Power Automate, I can right click on this application and I can choose to move it to my Power Automate work virtual machine. So now it's no longer on my primary. I'm just working on my PowerPoint here, and on my other virtual machine, I've got Power Automate there for me to continue to work. So it's a really nice feature for you to be able to move between the applications, move between the systems if you need to, keep your work organized. It's really great. The other thing that your boss does not want me to tell you about is if you decide maybe on that virtual workstation or that virtual desktop, maybe you're going to do some shopping or some browsing that you want to do. And if someone comes along and you don't want them to see what you're doing, you can easily switch back to your primary and make it look like you're working. But I didn't tell you that if your boss asks where you learned that. But it's very easy to move between those virtual desktops and just makes that process of keeping your work a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more organized better. Just a couple of tips when you're using these individualized virtual desktops is that they operate just like your current workstation is. So on the primary, if you decide to shut down your machine, it's going to shut down those other virtual workstations as well, those virtual desktops. So you do want to make sure you want to save your work, close out of everything before you end for the day. Microsoft does a pretty good job of trying to remember what you had there, and if it needs to, try reopen those those applications you have open there. But just keep in mind that it's running on your computer. You're running the applications that are on your computer, but you're just running it in a different kind of compartmentalized desktop view. So keep that in mind as you're using this functionality. All right, so we talked about some of those great things that we love about Windows 11, and that's just 5 of the many things. Now, for those of you who have already upgraded your environments to Windows 11, great. I hope that this operating system works well for you and that you're going to use these features that we've talked about. Now, for those of you who haven't yet started this upgrade, we do have 5 things you want to know before you start. And that's why we've got Jerod on the call here, because he's going to help us work with that transition to Windows 11, make that process move a lot smoother for you. So let's first talk about the things you want to be aware of. Now, as my favorite band from the 90s or 2000s, I don't remember what era it was, NSYNC would say, bye, 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 Cortana. What does that mean? Well, with Cortana, that was that voice that would talk to us when we're setting up our PC. Well, Cortana is not going to be there anymore. This feature is not active by default within Windows 11. It's not pinned to the taskbar by default, but it is still available as an app with a login. So if you wish to still have Cortana available to you, you do have the capability to add it. It's no longer going to be there. So you may enjoy the silence and solitude as you're setting up your machine or doing actions, or not accidentally clicking on Cortana and accidentally talking to her. It's just not going to be there, but you can still always add that if you'd like. Now, another thing that we have is something you want to be aware of is the reduction in menu items. So what does this mean? Well, some items like your live tiles and your quick status and your Windows timeline are not going to be there. So for example, when my welcome screen would come in, where my login screen would be, I might have a quick status saying you've got a meeting coming up in 15 minutes, or you've got 10 unread emails. Live tiles, if I were going to my start menu, I remember that little tile I might have to show me the weather. That's not going to be available on that start menu anymore. Also, if you've pinned applications or sites, for example, to your taskbar or to your start menu, some of those may not migrate from Windows 10. So you may need to repin those, or both to your taskbar and to your start menu on that. One thing that this hasn't affected me in the past, but I don't know if it's a concern for you, but it may be for some. You can no longer drag a file or folder from one window to another in the taskbar. So dragging it from another screen, again, that's a functionality I may have not used and probably don't miss. But one of the things I do recommend is take time to learn the new user interface. There's some little items about it, like if you right-click on something, when you're used to seeing the words cut, copy, paste, you're actually going to see small icons like the scissors, the clipboard, the 2 pieces of paper to show that you're copying. So that's something that took a little bit of getting used to, but you always can hover over a command if you're not quite sure what it's going to do. That little tooltip will always appear for you to give you a little bit more visibility. Now, let's talk a little bit about functionality issues. Now, my upgrade to Windows was seamless, and that was due to an amazing team that I work with, like Jerod, that did a lot of planning and preparation work prior to our upgrade. Jerod and his team have worked with our team and our customers to prepare so that your upgrade to Windows 11 runs as smoothly as possible. So Jerod, I'm going to hand this over to you to talk about any advice that you have for those who are thinking about upgrading.
Thank you, Sarah.
You bet.
So if you already have Windows 11, I hope what Sarah's provided has added to its value. But for the next couple of minutes, we're going to get into a few things that are a little more technical in nature for those of you that have not upgraded. One thing I would like to mention to follow on what Sarah said is internally, most of our resources have been upgraded to Windows 11. And I was one of the original group to upgrade. I haven't had any issues that I've experienced after upgrading. I do know that there's been a couple of people that have tried to go through the process that they get through quite a bit of it and then they find out they can't make it through. So what we've done is we've worked on the front end to become fully aware of what's needed to successfully install or upgrade to Windows 11. And so what we're going to be talking about next are the things that will help you with your transitions to Windows 11. So with the initial release of Windows 11, there were some issues with certain applications. Microsoft has taken care to resolve those issues. Things like QuickBooks, GIS, they had some functionality issues, but they did work tirelessly to try to get those issues resolved. And at this time, it looks like most of them have been. So if you're interested in upgrading to Windows 11, we recommend taking a systematic approach to that upgrade. And one thing to keep in mind is any customized applications that you currently use. If you have something that is very specific to what you do on a day-to-day basis, we recommend coming up with a test plan prior to upgrading. You don't want to go through that entire process of upgrading your entire fleet of workstations just to find out your important applications won't work. Things like finding an internal resource that is not opposed to change and is willing to work through some issues if they arise to help with a small rollout is a great option. You'll likely hear me say over and over again throughout this presentation, it's best policy to check with your own IT department or your trusted technology partner before you attempt an upgrade. So device system requirements. There's going to be some specific system requirements that every workstation will need to have to be able to install and run Windows 11. Some of these requirements are security related and in response to the ever-changing cybersecurity needs of businesses and individuals. One thing to keep in mind is all of these tools are there to assist IT professionals and users to be more secure, but nothing is 100% secure. We use these tools to reduce the possibility of bad actors gaining access to your data and network resources, and we must continue to adopt these new tools to keep up with those bad actors. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Windows 11 requires a Trusted Platform Module or TPM chip. The TPM is a cryptographic module that enhances computer security and privacy. It's a fancy way of saying things like encryption, decryption, protecting authentication credentials, and proving which software is running on a system are all part of the TPM chip functionality. Most new computers have them, and it is possible that the workstations you are already using have them. It just depends on the age and if it's a business class workstation or not. The second thing is Secure Boot. Secure Boot must be enabled. And Secure Boot is there to help prevent malicious software from being loaded when your workstation starts up. So most workstations have this capability even if it's not currently turned on. This is done through some BIOS settings, and unless you're familiar with how to do that, again, we recommend working with your IT department or technology partner to see if this is something your existing workstation can do. So what does all that mean for you? It means that before you try to install Windows 11 on any workstation, that workstation should be reviewed to make sure it meets the minimum requirements. Microsoft does have a tool that can review your workstation and let you know if it's upgradable, and that tool is called PC Health Check. Again, if you have an internal IT department or a technology partner, we highly recommend working with them when looking at upgrading to Windows 11. So your PC may not be up to snuff. And so this next topic is always kind of hard to broach with the customer and end users. We understand that workstations can be a large investment for companies, and with delays in availability and shipping times, it hasn't become any easier. But unfortunately, not all workstations are going to be able to run Windows 11, even if they do have the items from the previous slide. Let that next slide load. There we go. So as new software is developed and released, there's usually a requirement for faster processors, more memory, and additional storage. For example, Windows itself can take up to 27 gigs of space for a fresh install. But if you're already running Windows, there's a requirement of 64 gigs for an upgrade. That means you'll need to verify that you have the available space on an existing workstation before you try to upgrade. And so newer software requires graphic capabilities that older workstations may not be able to handle. It can also have larger memory requirements due to new features that come with the new software. So if you're currently experiencing slowness with your day-to-day work, there may be additional performance issues if you decide to upgrade to your existing workstations to Windows 11. And we want to highlight this as much as possible that if you have questions about your existing workstation and its ability to run Windows 11, please check with your internal IT department or your IT partner, and they can walk you through that process. So I know I ran through that pretty quickly, but I think at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah to finish out our discussion.
All right. Thanks, Jerod. That's really helpful information because I know that we're all excited to use it, and just to know that Windows 11 does require, certain system requirements, those minimum requirements, as Microsoft always mentions. Helpful to know if you're going to be ready for that. And those of you who may see in our chat, we did provide the link to that PC health check that Jerod was talking about. So if you're interested, you can click on that link. It'll give you more information about how to use that tool to help prepare you for that. But as you get ready to do your transition to Windows 11, we know that change is scary, but it's necessary. As with all technology that we use, there's newer, better, greater stuff out there that keeps continuing to be released by Microsoft and other providers. And with that functionality, there is a requirement to change, to upgrade to that, as support may be removed. Your applications may no longer work on it or are no longer supported on those operating systems. So you do have to make that change. Does it have to be today? Not necessarily, but when you get ready to do that, it helps to be prepared as possible. So as Jerod mentioned, this is something we can't say enough. Talk to your internal IT, audit your organization's devices and business applications. As Jerod mentioned with our team, some team members had some limitations where they couldn't move to Windows 11, maybe because of older hardware. The hardware itself wasn't up to date. It was an older machine, so we need to get a new updated piece of hardware for them. So take the time to go and plan that, figure that out accordingly, add that to your budgets as appropriate. And if you're not comfortable with this process, partner with an expert to ensure that smooth transition to Windows 11. As I mentioned, Jerod's a great resource for us here. We always talk to him when we have questions about that. He's doing this day in and day out. So those issues that you may encounter, your partner's probably gone through that as well and can help you with that transition. And the best thing about this change is that you can enjoy the latest generation of Microsoft operating systems. Microsoft has a really great plan for keeping everything up to date, releasing new features in all of their suite of applications, not just within the operating systems, but programs like Microsoft Office, the Power Platform, Azure, SQL. They try to have releases on a regular basis. If it's not at least once a year, it may be twice a year. So know that this is going to continue to evolve and improve, and they're going to continue to fix those small issues or bugs that you may encounter. So it's going to continue to get better for you as you go. So while it's scary, it's necessary, you can do that change. So with that, we are very excited to have you here with us today, and we want to take the time to see if you have any questions. If you do, feel free to use the question feature within the GoToWebinar. I do have a couple of questions that have appeared, so feel free to add yours as well. And Jerod, I think this is one that you're probably going to have to answer for me. And this question is, how do I know if I have a TPM chip?
Sure. So the easiest way to do it is to go to your start button, then click on run, and you can type in a command, and it's a pretty simple one. It's just tpm.msc, and it'll pop up a little window that says your trusted platform module chip is ready to be used. And if you see that, then you have a TPM chip available on your workstation. Now, if it comes up and says anything other than that, don't panic. There are some other ways to check and to turn on some virtual capabilities with that, but it's really recommended at that point that we work with an IT professional. So you're either your internal IT department or with your trusted IT partner to see what the next steps would be after that.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I've got another question here. I have a highly customized application on Windows 10. How can I test its compatibility before I upgrade? You want to take that one, Jerod?
Yeah, that's another very good question. And what we would recommend, and it's similar to what we put into the webinar today, which is you find somebody that within your environment that is open to change and willing to help if there are issues that arise. We would not recommend upgrading your entire fleet of workstations before you test it out. So come up with a test plan that you can go through. So find somebody that's willing to help upgrade their machine, validate that they have full functionality before you move on, and maybe roll it out into smaller groups. Things that happen within a lab usually are, best case scenario. So Microsoft could test their Windows 11 in, a perfect environment and not see any issues. It's when you start introducing those real world type issues that things prop up and you're not always prepared for them. So it's a good idea to just come up with a good plan and work internally with that. Again, working with your internal IT department or your trusted IT professional is the best thing that we can recommend for that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jerod. I've got another one here. Since this came out in October, are there any big updates coming soon? Yeah, so it's been out for about close to 7 to 8 months. So are you aware of any big updates that might be coming to Windows 11?
So it looks like they've done quite a bit of work on it already. Windows 11 version 22H2 is expected to ship in the second half of this year. That 22H2 is the major version of Windows 11. It's scheduled to reach a final build sometime this summer, and they're working on continuing throughout the summer on bug fixes and other small improvements that'll be delivered via a cumulative update to insiders and eventually the public once version 22H2 is ready to roll out, and that's likely in the September or October timeframe.
Okay.
And one thing I also wanted to mention about Windows, the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 is, again, don't panic. Windows 10 is still expected to be supported for quite some time. So it's not like this is happening, at the end of the month or anything like that. So.
Yeah, exactly. I've got some smaller devices like my Surface Go or some older laptops that they can still run just fine. And Microsoft will continue to provide updates, so I can do Windows updates. Applications will still run on them. So you're right. There's no rush when you're looking to do that. I got one more question here. How do I learn more about the desktop flows? Is there any training available? With all of Microsoft products, if you're interested in learning more about their software, there is Microsoft.com/learn, where you can actually search for Microsoft Learn. They have a lot of great content out there. A lot of them have tutorials that give you examples of how to create your first desktop flow, that give you more information about those commands, what you should be expecting when you're running an action, for example. And there's a lot of great content out there in the just on the web of how to utilize that desktop flow, also called robotic process automation. So a lot of content Microsoft provides. They sometimes do webinars on that, like we hope to do some webinars as well. So there's great opportunities out there. And if you're more interested, I'll put up our contact information here. If you want to reach either Jerod or myself with questions that you had today that we know that you can't think on the spot sometimes, that you think about it after the fact, feel free to reach out to us and we're more than happy to answer any of those questions for you about what we covered today or things that we may not have covered but you're interested in learning a little bit more about. So with that, we're at time. Jerod, we did this in perfect time, and I know it's exciting to talk about Windows 11 and better yet, to help better prepare you for it. So thank you all very much for joining us. I'm going to hand it back over to Brooke, our moderator.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah and Jerod. Just some final notes to the audience. We will have the recording of this presentation available on our website by the end of the week. So if you want to share that with your staff or want to refer back to it. And then also, if you would please fill out our quick survey. It's only 3 questions. It helps us deliver content that you want to hear. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks all.
Thank you.